When walls come tumbling down, when word was once up in the air is on the ground.
I'm Joe Insomniac. We're here with Julian Foster in Tears, talk about his new book. We'll start out with a simple question, man. What inspired you to start writing it?
Just seeing like what was going on out here as far as like what's going on with the youth, the inner city youth, and a lot of what's going on with the young females and like the obstacles they face and the things that they're going through. I just kind of wanted to tell that untold story, and I wanted to tell it so a person that's not necessarily from that environment would get a feel for what that life is like.
All right.
Right.
You chose a girl's perspective intentionally then?
Right.
Just to have it. Okay.
Right.
Was it hard writing coming from you? See that, or?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest challenges. People ask me like what was one of the biggest challenges with the book, and that was definitely it, having to explain things from a female's perspective. I think like we as men think we understand females and probably vice versa, but there was some research involved. I had to ask female friends, ask my sisters about certain things to like get an understanding from their perspective what these encounters are like or what their experiences are like.
Cool,
so
right.
yeah.
The whole book, I mean, the book starts off with her beating the hell out of another person.
Right.
And it only gets more and more crazy as the story goes on.
Right.
Was that, is that realistic, or did you kind of like...
It's all real.
It's all real.
And the sad part is like they say, people will probably have a problem with, like some people, will have a problem with like the graphic content and what have you, but it's real. Everything in that story is authentic. Either I've seen it, lived it, done it, experienced it. I didn't go into like a dark cave and create this evil stuff.
No,
I mean,
it's not exaggerated.
No, not at all. It's like they say, truth is stranger than fiction.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Throughout the whole book, she has kind of her uncle's voice playing in her head, kind of acting as a guide.
Right.
Did you take that from like your own experience, or? Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like when you're out there and you're doing things and you're in that world or what have you. I mean, better a lot of times, but you're gonna do what you got to do to survive, or to whatever it is, whatever your objective is. Sometimes you bend the rules to get what you want, or to try to move yourself to another level or what have you. And there's always that, for some people, because some people I don't think have it at all, but for some of us, we always have that older person, that grandmother, or that person that, always said things to you, and it's like almost that one day it'll all make sense type deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so she's always like reflecting back the things he said that I think at the time that he spoke them, they didn't make a lot of sense to her.
Right.
But as she's living and she's going through things, they start to fall into place.
Yeah.
And they start to, whether she listens to them or not, they're there.
I mean, I don't want to spoil too much of the book.
Right.
But,
Right.
It seems like the whole book she could listen to it, because even her thinking herself in the beginning of the book, she kind of questions why she was there, and I forget the girl's car. Cry.
Right.
But she keeps keeps going on and doing the same thing. I mean, it seemed like the story could either be redemption, or there's two ways out.
Right.
Was there a reason you picked a certain way?
Why it didn't have like a happy ending per se?
Right.
Because that's real to me. I mean, there's not too many happy endings out here. You know what I mean? And then I could have fairy taled it out, but reality, it's not a fairy tale, and I didn't want to compromise the authentic nature of that story and these characters that I'm writing about. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to make it fake. I want to make it as real as possible, because like I said, in real life, unfortunately, there are not a lot of happy endings. Put it like that. I'm not going to say there are none, but
is there an overall message to the book that you want to kind of?
A message? Well, I'd say for people that it depends on where you're coming from. I think that if you're coming from that same environment that my main character Khadijah is coming from, then it's kind of like a cautionary tale. It's kind of like, this is what can happen to you. One thing leads to another. If you read the book, it's kind of like a domino effect. She makes one bad decision that leads to another bad decision, and it ultimately like mushrooms and what have you. I think it could be a cautionary tale. And for people that are not from that demographic, who I encourage to read it, it's just showing you, you know, before you judge somebody else, you know, it's kind of like walk a mile in their shoes. Understand what their background is, understand what their challenges are, and understand that the things that divide us are usually really, really small. I always say, people ask me about this, and I always say that, like, you know, you got people out there that'll say, hey, well, I went to school and, you know, I got my degree and I became a dentist or what have you, but if we rewind 15, 20 years back and I make your mother a crackhead, and your father's in prison, and your sister's a stripper, or what have you, and I changed some variables. You know, the question is, would you have come out the same way?
Right.
And maybe you would have, because some people do still overcome. But I think unfortunately, a lot of the people that do overcome and do succeed and do break away from that environment, there's 1,000 that didn't. You know?
Characters that come from every different situation.
Right.
You have one that was about to be a model.
Yeah.
You have another person who grew up in a nice family, but he's still on the streets and doing stuff.
Right.
I mean, these are all people you've kind of had experiences
right
with.
These people, I mean, to be honest with you, some of the characters down to their name are authentic. You know, they're real people. They really exist. You know what I mean? And like I said, I just wanted it to be as real as possible. Some of the names have been changed in certain instances to protect the guilty, like I said, if you will. But for the most part, it's as authentic and raw and as real as it can be. And these people do exist, and they're true to form. They're true to life. Like if you were to meet them right now, that's how they are. Yeah, right.
Now, I mean, it's crazy reading the book, especially growing up in the city. You didn't pull any punches about where this was taking place. You had him on Jefferson. You had him on all the side streets.
Right.
You even mentioned Mojo's Chicken in it.
Right. Right.
So for someone reading it who's from here, it's very like authentic.
Right. It takes place on Jefferson Ave. It's the west side of this city for people that don't know, and it's one of those traps, we'll call it. It's where a lot of stuff happens. I think they're trying to clean it up now a little bit, that whole area. They're trying to whatever, but like in my experiences out there, when I was out there at my worst or whatever, it was a place where things definitely happened. And, you know, that's where the story takes place, on Jefferson and in those surrounding areas.
Did you have any trouble writing it? Did it all kind of come out?
It was relatively easy. I think the longest part about the process was like the editing, the going back and forth with the editing, and my editor saying, hey, I don't like this, and me saying, you know, well, you know, having to say, okay, do I want to go with that, or do I want to do my own thing, and that back and forth, and having to rewrite it and whatnot. I think that editing process took a long time. The actual story, you know, like I said, it's taken from my life, so it pretty much flowed. I think total writing time was only like a couple months, actually, if I, you know, were to go from beginning to end.
Yeah. This is the first book you published. You self-published it.
Right.
Was there any difficulties trying to actually get it from like story to publishing it, like from start to finish?
You mean from like manuscript to actual book form?
Yeah.
No, it's pretty easy. I mean, I did a program called, I'm going to plug CreateSpace, Amazon. It's pretty easy. I mean, you could upload your manuscript and then they pretty much do the rest. You're responsible for your cover art, but then they have a program that helps you do cover art as well. So like, it's pretty seamless, that whole process. You know, I think that like, you know, like if you were to write something right now and submit it to them, you know, all you'd have to do is pretty much get an ISBN number and put a cover on it and you'd be good to go. And that's good and that's bad, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of people putting out stuff that is like unedited and not as professional as probably it would be if it came from a big publication house.
Yeah.
So
talk about the cover for a second, because you designed the whole idea for it.
Right.
And it was the portrait of a girl on the back of another woman.
Right, I did what they call projection photography, and so we had a model come in, and she, you know, disrobed basically from, you know, well, totally actually, but we only shot from her head to her waist, pretty much, and we projected that image onto her, and then we took that picture and, you know, ran it through Photoshop, and it gave the image that it gave, or whatever. Actually, Lujar, I don't know if you're familiar with him, the artist Lujar.
I'm not.
He actually drew that picture. But yeah, it was actually, it was an artistic process.
What made you want to take that?
You know. I'm big time into art, man. I like photography. I like art. I like body painting. I really at first wanted to do like a body painting type thing.
Right.
It was just too expensive to like get a model and then find somebody to paint them, and then it was just too expensive. So that was like the next best thing, is to like do this, put the image on them, and make it seem as though it was painted on her.
Cool.
And so it was like, you know, the cheap alternative.
I mean, you have plans to write any more in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, I think that there's going to be at least another part to this book, if not two.
Right.
But that's not the story I'm working on next. I'm going to kind of let that one breathe. And, you know, it's only been out like a couple months, so I got some time before I have to, somebody's going to be like, okay, where's the second one at, hopefully.
Now, you want to plug where you can find everything?
Okay, the book is called Before I Wake. It's by Julian Foster. It's on Amazon.com. If you go to the search, put in Julian Foster, Before I Wake. I actually had the book in the car and I was going to show it, but I didn't bring it with me. But it's called Before I Wake by Julian Foster. It's on Amazon. Or if you know me, you can catch up with me, and I have copies myself.
And when the dust settles, we'll see that we've been living in the American